So we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, but now we're going to focus on talking about herbs. So we're going to talk through these herbs here, and we're going to talk about why we care about these, first of all.
A lot of these herbs flower, and they attract a lot of beneficials to your garden as well. That's my favorite thing.
Herbs are also great to add into your diet. So I mentioned the health benefits of plants. Herbs have some of the highest health benefit. They have a lot of health benefits, and compared to all the other plants in your diet, they're definitely something you should add in. Let me get this situated here.
Get all organized here.
Okay. All right, so we've already talked about chives. We'll touch on them again, but we have to go in alphabetical order.
I know, I was trying to go
Here it
alphabetical
is,
here, and I
basil.
was thinking, okay, there we go.
Okay.
We have to keep ourselves in track here.
OCD is real, y'all. Okay, we got two different basil plants here. Okay, so let's start with basil. So we were just talking about tomatoes, so this works out perfect because basil is one of the best things to grow around tomatoes. So there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, basil has actually been proven to improve the flavor of tomatoes planted nearby. But number two, and really the big one for me, is it helps keep pests off of tomatoes. So pests find what they're looking for through their sense of smell. If you have a tomato plant that's surrounded by a bunch of this basil, it'll put out a really strong scent and make it hard for the pests to find that tomato plant. So that was the big reason why we started growing these herbs, was to help with those issues. But then once we started tasting them, then we really started to kind of change our mindset a little bit. And it really came like, I guess, our first year we were so excited because we were getting all this squash out of the garden. And then like 2 weeks in, we were like, well, now what? Because this squash is boring, like it all tastes the same. And that's when we started using herbs, because Bill has 14 types of basil down at his place. And he has a lot of variety of other types too. So once you have all those different flavors, you can take the same meal and make it taste dramatically different night to night using the exact same rice and squash and then different, herb combination. You can make it taste dramatically different. So,
like I said too, with carrots, there is a cinnamon basil that is so great to put on carrots, and it gives it a little bit, almost a sweet taste. It tastes great. Yeah. Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Our kids love it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the trick with the carrots is we'll saute the carrots for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll roast them in the oven. If you have a hard time getting them to try it, you could cheat the first time by sprinkling some brown sugar on it, and then gradually take away the brown sugar. That's one thing we've done to trick them. So.
Yep. And you can also do pesto with basil. If you guys aren't familiar with pesto, it's super easy. All you do is just take a handful of the basil leaves, add in some pine nuts and some freshly shredded Parmesan cheese, and then extra virgin olive oil. And just mix that all together. It's really great combined with rice, or one of our favorite meals is like a bed of spinach and then some fish and then some pesto on top. It's really good.
And that same principle applies to pretty much all of these herbs that have these leaves like this. So sage is a great one to make pesto from.
Sage is a great pesto.
Oregano is a good one. It's a little harder with thyme because those leaves are smaller.
We've tried it.
You can do it. It just takes more work.
It's just harder.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about basil for a second, about how you plant it, because a lot of the things we're going to be talking about do not do well from seed. Basil is an exception to that. It is really easy to grow from seed, and the way that we typically grow basil is we will, the beginning of the season for us, for basil, it says 329. We're going to wait until the nighttime temperatures are in the 50s consistently, and so it's going to be around that time, the beginning of April. We'll take a couple of transplants, so something like this. I'll get it from Bill, so it'll be something like these two, and then I'll plant those around my tomatoes, and at the same time I'll also sprinkle seeds. So then those seeds, so I've got some to start off. I'm not waiting for seeds to sprout, but then I've also got the seeds coming behind it. Anything else we want to say about basil?
I don't think so. I'm in my head looking to see what's next alphabetical.
Well, we did
we're at
cilantro.
chives again.
Well, we did. We can talk about chives again. Briefly.
We'll touch on it again. For those who weren't here earlier when I declared my love for chives.
So if there's anything that you're going to add to your garden, make it chives.
Yes.
They are Well, I'm going to say that for oregano too. Those two things, add them to your garden because
Chives are my
they're
favorite, though.
very easy to grow, and you can add them to pretty much everything. Again, the flowers are
Yes, if
taste
you didn't
really good.
know that these flowers taste incredible. Yes, they have so much flavor to them, so good. And you can just add them just the way that you add all these other, just chop it up, add it to mashed potatoes, scrambled eggs, baked potato, whatever. Yeah, it's great.
You want to try? It tastes just like a leaf. You can try a leaf. That's just like what the flower tastes like, basically.
Yeah,
It's just more of a.
We'll pass these around.
Sorry,
feel free to
I got to
sample.
show more flowers later on, or I let you have one. Right. Normally I don't care, but like I got to show someone else the flower.
Can I ask you a question about chives?
Yeah. There you go.
They are easy to grow. How do you contain them?
Yeah, so we grow
That's a good
chives.
question.
Actually, you can see our chives in a smart pot around the
Yeah, I was
corner.
gonna say they're over here somewhere.
Yeah, for the most part, our chives are all in smart pots or in containers. The only onions we plant out in our garden are the bulb-producing onions that aren't perennial. It's not like meant in a way that it's going to get out of control as much. Meaning it's not going to like tunnel as much. So like you're going to be able to contain the growth of it if it's in a bed. It's not as. Are you having issues containing it? Yeah.
That's a great
I
problem.
didn't know to put it in a smart pot a couple of years ago.
So it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
I would love that problem.
I know.
I use so much at our house.
They may be spreading from seed too, though, because it may be that the seed is also going. That's got new one coming up. So if you either eat the flowers or chop the flowers when they're done, that'll keep the seeds from producing, and that'll help control the spreading. Because I don't think they're tunneling under as much. I mean, so they're probably tunneling under to grow that way, and they're also doing the seed, and that's really what you're seeing is the seed going, more than likely.
I'll eat those flowers.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes, do. And it's just fun, It's adding something colorful in, and the kids love it. They're like, "Ooh, we're gonna eat flowers."
Okay, so next we have
Cilantro.
cilantro. Is it down there?
Yep.
Is that parsley?
Cilantro.
It is cilantro. Okay.
They look the same.
So this is cilantro. It is one of my favorite herbs, but it is difficult to grow in Oklahoma. The reason for that is it does not like temperatures above 80 or below 60, so that's like 2 days a year it feels like here. So you pretty much have to plant it in this window, and you'll get 1 or 2 rounds off of it, and then by June you're not going to be able to have it anymore. You'll have to wait until the fall to plant it again. So obviously you want salsa. I mean, you want a cilantro typically whenever you're making salsa, and that presents a problem because salsa is a summer thing. So what you can do is this needs some water, but this is Vietnamese cilantro. And this is not related to cilantro in any way, shape, or form, but it does taste a lot like it. And it grows really well in the heat. Vietnamese cilantro, or Rao Ram is what it's called there. I'll pass it around, you can see the card. We have it in our app, I'll pull it up. But it is something that grows really well in the summer,
under
especially
Rao Ram.
here. Oh, it's under what? Rao Ram?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. So this is what we switched to in the summer. As our cilantro replacement. There's also a Puerto Rican cilantro that you can grow in the summer that does well. But there's also other types of herbs too that we've switched to in salsa. So instead of only using cilantro in salsa, things like papicho and papayo, oregano. What else have we gotten from you? Bill's the one that always talks me into trying new papicha. Is that what it's called? Papicha and papalo. Papalo, yeah, those are the 2 things we tried last year that we switched away from cilantro. So, okay, what do we want to talk about next after cilantro?
I'm looking. See what's next alphabetically. I don't know. Oregano? Is that what's next?
We're gonna roll with it.
Okay.
Okay, oregano. So I'm gonna say the same thing I said earlier about chives. If you're gonna add anything into your garden, make it this. It's really easy to grow, and it has a ton of health benefits for you. So oregano, it's on all the lists of things you should add into your diet as far as herbs to help with heart health especially. And like I said, it's really easy to grow. Carrie, what's our favorite way to use it?
I mean, oregano is, it's commonly an Italian thing. We add it to pastas. We even make a pesto out of this as well, which we add that in the same way to our diet, to rice, to anything.
Oregano, again, is a great companion plant. It's been shown to improve the flavor of pretty much anything that's grown next to, and it also helps repel pests. It won't get super tall. It'll stay kind of as a ground cover underneath things. So I have it under my tomatoes a lot, or peppers, or things like that, especially on the east side of it.
I think we're at rosemary. Unless you have more. Sorry.
Oh, we skipped over mint. Uh-oh.
We did skip over mint.
Okay.
Oh man,
Rewind.
I do know my
Back to the
ABCs. I
ends.
promise.
So this is lemon balm, which is in the mint family. So our mint is in a smart pot around here somewhere. There's a mint down here, actually. Here's one. So there's a lot of different types of mint you can grow. This is mojito mint here. There's apple mint, chocolate mint. There's all different types of mint. We don't really use mint to eat in our cooking that much. We mostly use mint in our drinks. So, but not just those drinks. not just those drinks.
Other drinks too.
Yeah. In the summer, we will make a big gallon, those glass jugs, We'll put a bunch of ice in there, and then a bunch of mint and cucumber, and squeeze some lemon, and sometimes some lemon balm, and then let that infuse for a few hours, and then that's a really good drink in the summer. So, and then obviously mojitos, things like that. We made toothpaste with it once, and it was cool, but I doubt we'll do it again.
We tried
It was like baking soda and mint
and
it
was coconut
oil
too, so
it wasn't great.
it did the job, but
Worth a shot.
it was fun to try it.
But for things like that, and for scrubs, for sugar scrubs, things like that, it's super popular to use mint in those. So mint is also. Go ahead.
I was gonna say you also make a really good tea at night.
Yeah. There's
mint.
Mint also helps repel mice. They don't like the smell of it. So if you have an area where you have mice issues, you can plant it around there, and they won't like it as much. The scent is really overpowering for their senses since they have such good noses. That's mint. Anything else we want to say about mint?
Oh, make sure you plant mint in containers.
Yes,
because
that's a good
mint
point.
is very invasive.
Yeah. It's probably the most invasive thing you can grow. It will, once you plant mint, you will always have mint. It's like Bermuda in that way. It will also grow really well in the shade. So if you have an area that doesn't get much sun, you need something to plant in it, mint is a great thing to add into there as well.
Okay, are we at rosemary now?
Are we at rosemary now?
I think so.
Okay. Rosemary. So Carrie hated rosemary for the first year that we grew stuff because it's very overpowering, and I put way too much of it in a recipe. So it took her a while to try it again, but
I'm coming around.
She's coming around to it. So rosemary is, along with some of the other things we talked about, rosemary really shows this. It's from the Mediterranean climate, so it's used to hot days and then arid nights and a flood every now and then, but not a lot of consistent moisture. So with that idea in mind, it does not do well getting watered a lot. So it's counterintuitive to the other plants. You only water it every couple weeks-ish. You need to let it dry out. So depending on where it is, if it's in a smart pot, it might be once a week in the ground, once every couple weeks. But the idea is it doesn't want to be mulched. It doesn't want to be that's not what it wants. So sandy soil, it likes to dry out. And the biggest issue people have with it is overwatering. So often with rosemary, when you can see our rosemary, we've got it with us around here in these smart pots. We brought it with us. That's usually where we have our rosemary, is in a smart pot. So rosemary can survive the winter here in Oklahoma. It's always a hit or miss as to whether or not it's going to. Really what impacts rosemary more than anything is whenever we have these wild temperature swings where it goes 70 degrees and then 0 and then 70 and then 0. That's the kind of stuff that really messes with these herbs. So you can help them through it by just covering them with a blanket on those really cold snap nights. Now, if it's gradually going down, you don't have to worry about it. The plant knows how to handle that. It's just these sudden changes. It doesn't know about Oklahoma. It's not used to this. As far as using rosemary is concerned, we typically will dry the leaves and then run them through a food processor to make a fine little powder, and then we'll sprinkle that on all sorts of stuff, whether it's homemade sweet potato fries or the sauteed carrot and sweet potatoes you mentioned earlier is a good seasoning for that.
I've also added it fresh to chickens when I'm doing a whole chicken in the Instapot, or fish, things like that.
Yeah, it's also, so I don't have a large rosemary around me, but if I had one, I'd show you. These stems eventually get really long and really wood-like. And what you can do is strip off all the leaves from it. Yeah, there's
Oh,
one
yeah.
down here. Yeah. Thank you. You can strip off all the leaves from it, and then you can use that as a skewer on the barbecue. So then you can run all the meat through it and then grill it, and it gets infused with the rosemary flavor from the inside.
How do you dry it?
So there's a couple ways you can dry it. You can, the best way to dry it is just to put it in a bundle and then hang it somewhere. And then you may have to rotate it every now and then if it's one side that leans up against a wall. But that's the best way to do it. It takes 6 to 8 weeks for it to completely dry out, depending on what it is and how the temperature and all sorts of other things. If you don't have time or if you don't want to have it hanging, then you can do like, we have a dehydrator that we use, but that will, you'll lose some of the quality of the oils and you won't have the same end product as if you let it naturally dry. So we try not to use that as much. Other ways that you can let's talk through preservation on some of these herbs because we haven't talked about that on some of the ones we've talked about already.
Yeah, so with the pestos that I talked about too, you can freeze those and they last a few months in the freezer. Ours never last that long, but that is one way to preserve them. Another way that you can do it is that you take the leaves and then you can shred them down. We use just a food processor, Ninja, and then we put them we have silicone ice cube trays, and we put them in there and add some olive oil, and then we freeze that and then pop them out. They're just like ice cubes. And then whenever you want to go to use them, we just pop those on a pan and it melts and heats up, and we already have our oil and some seasoning, and we're good to go.
That works really well.
Yes. Yeah, I love having those. It makes it so much easier.
Okay, so next on the list.
Did you want to talk about this
Yeah,
variety?
yeah. So I mentioned earlier rosemary surviving the winter. Bill Ferris, the owner of Prairie Wind Nursery, they're here with us today. He actually does a lot of the trials for OSU to see what varieties of rosemary and other herbs do best in Oklahoma and survive our winters. And ARP, the variety we're passing around now, is the one that is it's winning so far, year 4 of his trial, 3 or 4 of his trial. And it's the only one that survived that really weird winter we had a couple years ago where we had those wild temperature swings. So, and he has this here for sale. He has, if you haven't been to his nursery yet, you need to check it out because he has, if you go most places, they only have a couple varieties of basil. He's got 14. It's just 14, what was it? Prairie Wind Nursery, it's down in Norman. The first time I went there, I spent like 3 or 4 hours just taste testing all the different herbs, and my mouth was on fire by the time I left, but I got to try out everything. And I'm a collector of sorts, so I've got one of each of all those different types. The same energy that went into collecting football cards when I was a kid goes into this now. So, but it's a cheap obsession. They're like $1.50 each, It's like cheaper than football cards were. So, okay, so next we have sage. So again, she hated sage for the first year because I ruined it. I used way too much of it in a recipe. So this is another one of those things that you got to be careful how much you use. But really, sage pesto is probably my favorite pesto. Well, that and the basil, but between basil and sage, they're my two favorite pestos. And sage is something that has a ton of health benefits for you. It's great to add into your diet. It's a lot like rosemary, where it does not like to stay wet. So you got to make sure it's able to drain and do well in that area.
It is also really beautiful. If you haven't seen, we have a huge sage plant that has these beautiful flowers. There are always beneficials around, like bees, butterflies, just all the time. And it's so gorgeous. And it smells really good. You have a great cologne.
Yeah, so sage is a great, it's a stress relieving plant. So I work from home a lot, and if I get, I'm a coder. If I get stuck on a coding problem, I get stressed out, and I go outside and I bear hug this plant. And it makes me feel better.
It makes
Not
them
kidding.
smell really good,
Literally
too.
do that. Especially when it has all the flowers on it and everything. What's that?
Flowers on it?
You know what? I actually don't know about that one.
I don't know if you can or
Yeah,
not.
I don't know.
You might be able to. I'm not sure.
You taste it.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. I promise.
You
We'll,
know
we'll
we
be
will.
finding out now. Anything else we want to say about sage?
I don't know. I think. Any questions about sage?
Okay, so the last one on our list for this part.
It's time for time.
You love your thyme jokes. So thyme is something, I've done a lot of warning you about not overdoing it with other things. Go wild with thyme. It's very mild flavor. You can use a lot of it. You're not going to overpower a recipe. We use it as much as we use salt in our garden. It is something we add to pretty much everything. It's really good. It's really good for you. It's really easy to grow. Again, doesn't like staying wet, so that's the biggest consideration for it. It grows really well underneath other plants. Does well in shady spots, things like that.
It's really easy to propagate too. We have a whole bunch of little baby thymes that we started last fall just from just a couple cuttings.
Yeah, and it's real simple to do that. You just take, something like this and you cut it, strip off the bottom leaves, and then you can put that in potting soil and let it sit indoors for a few weeks until it takes root, and then you can start to move it outside.
Yeah, so, like you said, you can add thyme to anything. It's super universal.
Are there any questions about any of the herbs we just talked about or covered? Or? Okay, well, let's give away some more Smart Pots.
Let's do it.
All right, so if you haven't got a ticket yet, everyone have a ticket? Okay.
Okay. There we go. Yep, got the same ones.
All right, so we've got a 7-gallon Smart Pot and a 15-gallon Smart Pot we're giving away.
Okay. 7, 344.
You got a winner.
Yay!
You're welcome. Thank you. And now we have a 15-gallon Smart Pot. So this is a great size for potatoes especially. Potatoes do really well in these.
We love our potatoes.
All right, we're going to take like a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll start going through some more plants. So we'll start again here about 3:30, 3:35. Just long enough for us to run to the bathroom, run my bag.